I have a listener question today, and it's quite a doozy. Do you ever have off days that absolutely crush your confidence? Oh boy. Well, newsflash, most of my practice days crush my confidence in some way. And it's done intentionally just because, well, I'll talk about frustration levels briefly. So I'll say there's kind of, in my brain, there's kind of three different modes of practice or speeds or levels you can be performing at. One is just doing what you know how to do without anything. It'd be like your the way you want to perform on demand for a match or a qual, just the thing you know how to do, you feel confident about it. Then the next one is kind of that simmering frustration level, slightly uncomfortable, just a little bit more than what you're comfortable with. A little bit faster, trying to get away with a little bit, seeing a little bit less, doing a little bit less, whatever. Just the next step up, a little bit beyond your comfort zone. Then beyond that, you kind of go into full unhinged and undisciplined lunatic, which is kind of, it'd be like if you're trying to feed the gram where you're like whipping on the holster. It's like it barely gets to your eye line, maybe isn't even at your eye line yet, and you're already cranking on the trigger as the gun goes out. And then you like, holster up, walk down, you're like, hell yeah, brother, look at that. And then like you act like that was all part of the plan, but well, the person looking at the hits, you're like, yep, they're figuring out the same time you are if they hit the target or not. So that kind of casino style shooting, if you get enough chances at it, yeah, you're going to have a good result. But that's not really a productive way to practice, or not a way I would recommend you practice. So instead, I like operating at that simmering frustration level where it's just a little bit more than what comes naturally. And if you operate at that level, and, well, at least the way I'm wired, kind of being perpetually dissatisfied where I just keep nitpicking away if things aren't just perfect and the best they could possibly be, yeah, I mean, it's going to lead to feeling like your confidence is a little bit crushed at times or a little bit ragey where it's just not quite where you want it to be. It shouldn't get to the point where it boils over and you want to start throwing magazines or selling your guns, but if you're always a little bit crushed, a little bit dissatisfied, a little bit frustrated, I think that's in a good spot to be in. So, like the person asking this question, do you ever have days that absolutely crush your self-confidence? Maybe not to the level of self-confidence, but I'm always a little bit frustrated in training. However, if it's going to that point where it's not just I'm pretty irritated right now that I couldn't do the thing I wanted to do, or it's just a little bit too much. If it's like, I don't know if shooting is for me, I don't think I could do this with no time limit, then I think it's important to look at kind of calibrating the risk or what the difficulty is calibrated at. For example, let's say I'll work on bill drills with my handgun. I'll make an obvious example that most people are like, yeah, duh. Let's say I was doing it at 50 yards. Bill drills with the handgun. That I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm saying like that's pretty tough. And that would be something for a very, very skilled competitor with a tuned gun or very capable gear, very capable shooter to try to do. For most people, you look at that and like, yeah, that's pretty crazy. So it's important to have realistic expectations. If you're doing a drill that requires like a throttle control type of thing where it's just reacting to the color of your sight for most of the shooting, there's one shot that's a partial or a head box or a piece of steel that you really need to wait and stop and see the sight stop stable on the target and not moving. But instead, you decide you want to shoot with color or maybe even just use the force a little bit where you just kind of look at the target, kind of sling the gun out there, and once in a while you'll connect, once in a while you won't. Then like, yeah, that's going to crush your confidence if like the challenge isn't calibrated to what's reasonable or what you're capable of. So that's part of the problem is it gets to the point where people have kind of unrealistic expectations for where they're at that point with their shooting. And if that's the case, if you get to the point where you go to the range and you just like, man, I can't even draw the gun out of the holster or something, then Like, hey, why don't you just relax for a minute? What's going on? What's not happening? Your firing hand isn't finding the right spot on the gun, or your support hand is not finding the spot that it should be on the frame of the pistol when you draw it, or something along those lines. There could be something with a technique that you're just missing that day, or the earth's rotating just a little bit too fast and that's throwing off your draw or whatever. But for the most part, I think when people get like this, kind of a little bit ragey, where it's just like, it's just not happening, I'm super frustrated, it's just too much, or crushed self-confidence, I think that's more towards like making sure you scale the difficulty of what you're doing appropriately. Like, I mean, I could say it a bunch of different ways, but that's the simplest way to say it. Where are you, like, real talk, where are you at right now, and what does just a little bit beyond that look like? And is this something that with a little bit of training you can get to, or is this something that's like, if you're trying to do like trick shots and like draw on one, reload one on a 200-yard target or something, it's like, with enough chances, yeah, you could probably make it happen. If you go to the range thinking you're going to do that on the first time, every time, because someone else did it, or you did it one time, you should be able to do it again. It's like, that's not realistic. Most people can't do that over and over and over again. So it's about having realistic expectations, in my opinion, and making sure the difficulty is scaled for what you are able to do at your current skill level. And either it's just, if you need to build a little bit of confidence up right before a match, I don't try to do like super hard all headshots, no targets closer than 25-yard training the last like practice session before a match, or gonna go teach somewhere, whatever. Probably the last practice session or so might just be something where I just demonstrate to myself I know how to do the thing. Everything's set reasonably, not all gimmies, but set at reasonable difficulty stuff that I look at that, yep, I can do that. And then you just go through and just do the things at the proper pace that your previous training would tell you is appropriate. So in a broad stroke, closer targets, probably 15 yards and closer, just seeing the color of your sight, you're good to start shooting. Farther targets, probably 15 yards and beyond for most people. You need to see your stopped, stable sight before you start shooting, especially on steel targets or smaller targets. And then you kind of just go from there. So anyway, hopefully that gives you some things to think about, apply to your training. Again, scaling the difficulty or having realistic expectations are quite important. It's also not, in my opinion, a bad thing to be perpetually dissatisfied where you're kind of always a little bit unhappy with whatever's happening and you want better. But within that, in your brain, you need to know what you are actually capable of doing and what is probably a bit of a stretch for that day. So hopefully it gives you some things to think about when you are calibrating the difficulty of your training. But if you have follow-up questions, drop it below. I read through the comments. Try to do it every day or every other day. And so if I can answer your question just in a short sentence, I will. Or sometimes it's just something that's like, yep, this is going to take a while to explain, and I'll just cap it and save it in my collection. And then when I get to like today, then today's the day to do videos, then I can just go through and just read each cap as I go, and that way I make sure your questions get answered. So appreciate you watching, and have a good day.